house battle in Chicago 8 years before. Everyone stunned by the fury of Lewis's attack.
What's happening, my people? It's Cast Sports again, back for another afternoon with the family. Now, as usual, before we get started, let me give a shout out to the JBT community. It's just boxing talk. We're a group of people who just love to talk boxing. And we're always looking for others to join us. And you don't have to have a podcast. The only requirement is you just have to love to talk boxing. That's all. Miss Cass, hashtag JBT, crush the legend. Donnie Williams, Mike Mazik, Define Arnie One. Salute to everyone and welcome to another episode of Cast Sports, the Box Historian. Today, the evolution of boxing. The new school lions versus the old school legends. And you know what time it is. If it's Monday through Friday, 2 p.m., it's the Box Historian, bringing you all that boxing history. Boxing is the greatest sport of them all. That's why we love it. Can't get enough of it. How's everyone today? We're right back at the beginning of another big week of boxing history. We got the first big one out of the way, David versus David. David B came out on top. It went the way I thought it would go. David B got a decision. Clearly, experience was the difference. You could see points where Morrell was in the high guard, backing up. When have you seen David Morrell stay in the high guard for entire rounds and stuff? The Benavidez was relaxed, confident, going about his craft. Morrell looked lost at times, but it was a good fight. He had nothing to hang his head about. He got in there with the top of the division and competed. Did a great job. Great fight, man. Great fight. Us the fans, we won Saturday, okay? But today, we're going to be talking about the evolution of boxing, We're going to talk about fighters from different eras. What was the best era of boxing? We're going to talk about that today, okay? And then we're going to talk about some of the best, since we're talking about different eras, we're going to talk about some of the best boxers from each decade, going back to the 20s all the way up to the 2000s. Okay, but we're going to start out with highlights of boxing history. It's Black History Month, so we're going to look at some of the top Black boxers in boxing history. Okay, but first, for the week, we got today, of course, the evolution of boxing. Tomorrow, we are down to 118, the bantamweight division, right? We're going to look at the bantamweight division tomorrow, a little history of it, and some of the great boxers that performed there over the years, and some of the current top 10 in the division, and some big fights and other significant events that's happened at 118 over the years. And then Wednesday, we're looking at the different boxing styles. We're going to look at the Eastern European boxing style Wednesday, or the Soviet boxing style. Thursday, boxing in the States, Oklahoma, okay? And Friday, don't miss Friday. The profile is the life and career of James Lights Out Tony. That's Friday. James Lights Out Tony. Okay? But let's get to our little 2 to 2:30 segment. Highlights of boxing history. Thank you very much. Appreciate all your support. Had to, get my people over in the peanut gallery, get their recognition for what we're doing here. But let's talk about this highlights of boxing history. We're going to talk about some of the top Black boxers throughout history, since it's Black History Month, right? Okay. 10 legendary Black boxers who helped shape the legacy of the sport of boxing. Now, Black boxers have provided entertainment for decades, whether watching them live in Vegas or paying for a fight on cable TV. Many people admire the physical powers of anyone who can constantly take and deliver repeated punches. However, the violence of boxing goes hand in hand with extreme discipline, fitness, and the ability to drive social change. Now, cultural and social impacts of Black boxers. Boxing has gone beyond being a sport or form of entertainment. It has provided a way out of poverty, serving as a platform to highlight social issues like civil rights and poor boxer retirement benefits, while letting the world know that being Black doesn't mean being inferior, okay? Some fighters like Jack Johnson and Joe Louis broke racial barriers during the time of Jim Crow and legal lynchings. Black champions have inspired other Black youth with their success, confidence, discipline, and fitness regimens. Even athletes who have passed on continue to impact other boxers and their fans. And the Black boxers' lasting legacies. Black professional boxers have a lasting legacy of Black boxers have a lasting legacy of admirable athletic and social achievements. Joe Louis became a national hero when he defeated Max Melling, while Muhammad Ali became a civil rights icon who sacrificed years of his prime for his beliefs. These Black boxers have shown great physical and mental strength and heart throughout their careers and beyond. So let's discuss some of these boxers who stand out as some of the greatest athletes of all time. Okay, let's look at some of them now. Okay, how's everybody? I got kind of caught up on admirable. Somebody needed some help with that. Let's look at some of these boxers though, man, okay? Highlights of boxing history. Okay, the first one is Layla Ali. Yep, Layla Ali. Now, Clarissa Shields is the greatest woman boxer of the moment, right? Just fought yesterday. Greatest woman boxer of the moment. But the one who brought women's boxing to national and international attention happens to be the same one who went undefeated in her career at 24-0. Now, few took Layla seriously until she, like her legendary boxing father, started knocking out everybody that stood across from her. 24 wins, 21 knockouts. Incredible for women's boxing. Okay, let me say this again. Layla Ali had 24 wins, 24 of them by knockout. Only 3 people went the distance with her. 87.5%. That's unheard of for women's boxing. That's great for men's boxing. 87.5% for Layla. Knocking out everybody who stood across from her, except for only 3 people went the distance with her in 24 fights, okay? Now, she created a whole generation of women's boxing fans, Layla Ali. Yes, she did. And she did it with as much style and grace as her famous father. And she was talking about coming out of retirement to fight Shields at one time for the right price. But now that fight is past the sell-by date, okay? I don't want to see Layla Ali and Clarissa Shields. Layla is too old. You know, in prime versus prime, Layla would stop Clarissa, okay? He would run right through her, like a pair of scissors cutting through a sheet of paper, okay? But now, nah. Age makes a difference, and Clarissa is a much younger fighter, and I would pick Clarissa right now. But prime versus prime, Layla hands down. Okay, next, this is a little highlight of boxing history. Black History Month, we're looking at some of the Black boxers that have been great in the sport. How about Marvelous Marvin Hagler? Marvelous Marvin Hagler. With a nickname like Marvelous, you know this brother had to be great. But the Marvelous moniker doesn't do justice to the terror he evoked in his opponents. Operating with a forever underappreciated complex, he took out his pain on those who dared stand across from him in the ring during one of the greatest eras of boxing, by the way, okay? One of the legendary 4 Kings. And if you don't believe me, one of his fights even has a nickname, The War. Remember that one with Tommy Hearns? Simply called The War. Also, Hagler was one half of the duo involved in what some boxing experts consider the greatest round of boxing in the history of the sport. Okay? Him and Tommy Hearns, remember that one? Marvelous Marvin Hagler. Okay? How about Smoking Joe Frazier? That's him with his back to us. Smoking Joe Frazier, like Howard Cosell used to say, Smoking Joe Frazier. Melanin Queen 27 in the building. Salute, Melanin Queen. How are you today? How was your weekend, Queen? Hope you had a great one. Good to see you. I can relax now. Melanin Queen is here, and she's going to be putting everything going on in this great JBT in the chat. And we're going to talk about that meet and greet coming up in a little while, but Melanin Queen is already talking about it. There's everything you need right there. Okay? So let's continue. We're talking this Black History Month and highlights the boxing history today. We're highlighting some of the black boxers, some of the great black boxers, just a few of them. 10 of the great ones. Smoking Joe Frazier. Frazier's signature punch was his left hook, right? Now Google a childhood accident involving a pissed off pig that literally left Joe with his left arm perfectly cocked to deliver that devastating left hook at any moment. But that crazy story is not what landed Frazier on this list. He simply was one of the meanest, baddest fighters during one of the meanest, baddest eras of boxing, the 70s. Sure, Smoking Joe first gained the heavyweight championship while Ali was banned from boxing due to Ali's refusal to serve in the Vietnam War. But when Ali came back, Smoking Joe beat him in the ring in what was dubbed the fight of the century. So for those who say Smoking Joe won it while Ali was gone, when Ali came back, Smoking Joe beat him right in the middle of that ring. March 8th, 1971. Right? Frazier earned a unanimous 15-round decision over Ali. And Ali won the next two fights, but Ali said himself that their third fight, the Thriller in Manila, was the closest thing to death he'd ever experienced. After the fight, Ali was no more good for the rest of the evening, after the third one, or even days afterwards. But Frazier, after the fight, spent the entire evening partying at a Manila club after going toe-to-toe with the man white America called the Louisville Lip, because he talked more trash than a little bit, but he backed it up too. Now, only two men beat Frazier, Muhammad Ali and George Foreman. Only two to ever beat Joe Frazier. He had 4 losses, 2 to Ali, 2 to Foreman, right? No one else beat him. Okay, just those two legendary heavyweights. Okay, so that tell you about Smoking Joe right there. Aduri Pennant. Salute Aduri Pennant. Ray Mercer versus David Tua. Wow, that would be a good one. Man, that's hard. I would have to think about that, Aduri. Man, I might go with Tua. If he can pin him down and land some of them big bombs on Ray, yeah. But that would be a very good fight, Aduri Pennant, yeah. But salute, Aduri. Cast Sports, Monday through Friday, 2 p.m., bringing you all that boxing history. Okay, let's continue. We're talking about some black fighters. It's Black History Month. This is highlights of boxing history. You know, our 2 to 2:30 segment. We might run a little past 2:30 today, but we got time. We're talking about some of the greatest black fighters in boxing history. Just some of them. We don't have time to cover all of them. Okay, Smoking Joe Frazier. How about Big George Foreman? There's Big George. A product of the mean streets of Houston's 5th Ward, Foreman readily admitted that he was a bully growing up, beating up kids for their lunch money. And Foreman took that same approach and persona into the boxing ring with him. So much so that Foreman literally struck fear into his opponents. People old enough to remember know that Foreman was Mike Tyson before Mike Tyson, okay? He was his generation's Sonny Liston. Foreman was seen as invincible. Big George didn't just win fights, he destroyed his opponents. Foreman snatched souls from his opponents. He absolutely beat the manhood out of his opponents. When one opponent talked much trash before his scheduled fight with Foreman, Foreman's manager calmly said, George is going to beat him like he caught him stealing chickens. So what happened in the fight? Foreman beat that brother like he caught him stealing chickens. Now, when Foreman took on the heavyweight champ at the time, Joe Frazier, people predicted a true battle of the Titans because neither man had any back down in him. The result, however, was a fight so lopsided that iconic sportscaster Howard Cosell's words describing the fight became iconic themselves. Down goes Frazier. Down goes Frazier. Down goes Frazier. Went down 6 times in 2 rounds, okay? Nobody, absolutely nobody, wanted a piece of Foreman. And when Ali said he would fight him, his friends, family, media, his own trainer, Angelo Dundee, everybody, me, feared that the greatest would get killed in the ring. Not just beat down, but killed, as in beat to death, right? Everybody was saying, don't fight him, Ali. Just let him have it. But Ali went in there and pulled that rope-a-dope on him, and the rest is history. But Foreman is on this list for not just what he did in the early years of his career. After he lost to Ali in the rumble in the jungle and went into an admitted depression, he turned his life around and won back the title in his 40s. Yeah, George came back and had a second career, remember? There may have never been a greater comeback story in the history of sports, not just boxing sports. Because see, boxing is not the kind of sport you can walk away from for over a decade and then come back in your 40s and hope to compete with boxers in their 20s. But Foreman not only did that, he came back and won the championship. Remember? Incredible. Big George Foreman. I like the boxing history. Some of the greatest black boxers of all time. Jack Johnson. Jack on the left there. Jack Johnson. Another Texan-born fighter made this list, and it's none other than Jack Johnson, the first black heavyweight champion. On October 26, 1908, Jack Johnson beat Tommy Burns so bad that 5-0 literally entered the ring to stop the fight. Yeah, 5-0. The police came into the ring to stop the fight because this black man, who was supposed to be inferior to any white man, and especially Tommy Burns, the heavyweight champion, was beating this dude so bad, the police even ordered all filming of the fight to cease because they did not want the ass whipping Johnson was putting on their great white hope to be seen by blacks and give them ideas of fighting back against their daily oppression. Neither did the powers and principalities that want that fight footage to be seen by whites, fearing it would destroy the illusion of their supposed superiority over black people. The Johnson story is an amazing one that you need to check out for yourself. And oh yeah, there were literally white domestic terrorist attacks on black communities on multiple occasions after Johnson won some of his fights because white people were so pissed that this black man continued beating their champions. Jack Johnson, the Galveston Giant. Okay, next, some of the greatest black fighters in history. Sugar Ray Leonard. There's Sugar Ray. Let me see what's going on in the chat. Derry's put some good ones in there. Ivory Bucci. Yeah, he went to prison. Somebody said he was making a comeback. Ivory Bucci. Former Ernie Shavers would have been good too, yeah. And they fought in the same era, but we never got that one. Yeah, it's a wonder Ali wasn't a switch in it. Derry. He probably could have, but he just, just never tried it, I guess. Okay, but appreciate you, Derry Pennant, for all your input into the chat. Okay, Sugar Ray Leonard. Okay, now because Sugar Ray Leonard was America's sweetheart during the 1976 Summer Olympics, and because he became the nation's media darling, and because he relied on speed and style to win the majority of his fights. Some fighters and many fans considered him soft. Now the thinking was, this pretty boy celebrity is soft, and real boxers will show enough, take him out, and put him in his place. But a funny thing happened on the way to Sugar Ray's demise. He took on all comers: Roberto, Hands of Stone Duran, Thomas the Hitman Hearns, and Marvelous Marvin Hagler, and beat them all, okay? Sugar Ray is the only 4 king. They beat all the other 4 kings, the only one. Roberto got Sugar Ray in their first go-round, but the next time they met, Leonard's speed and toughness was enough to make the Hands of Stone quit, okay? Sugar Ray said, making him quit was better than knocking him out. And those 3 Leonard's Hearns fights, all 3 of those, well, the third one was, they were up in age then, but it still was a good fight. And the second one, the rematch. Hearns won the second one. The first one was a doozy though, but they called it a draw, remember. I heard Sugar Ray tell Hearns that he won on Hot Boxing with Mike Tyson. Yeah, Sugar Ray told Hearns he won the fight. Evander the Real Deal Holyfield, okay? He makes the cut. One of the greatest black boxers of all time. Evander. Holyfield wasn't the biggest, fastest, or strongest heavyweight ever. He was just one of the best of all time and the toughest. His nickname, The Real Deal, fit him like a glove. Now, during that era, when grown professional boxers were running for their lives from Iron Mike Tyson, the baddest man on the planet, Holyfield not only fought him twice, but he beat him twice. Their first fight ended with an 11th round TKO. And you know what happened in the second fight? It was cut short by a 3rd round disqualification of Tyson. Why did they disqualify Iron Mike? Because he was so discouraged by Holyfield's dominance that Iron Mike bit off part of Holyfield's ear. Remember? Bit him twice. The first time, Holyfield and his team and the ring doctor said they could continue. And Holyfield's team said, no, don't disqualify him. Let us continue. And then Mike went in there and bit him again. So the referee, Mills Lane, said, nah, that's it. Couple more. You talk about the greatest black fighters of all time. You can't leave the Brown Bomber off. No way. Al Booger in the building. What's up, AB? How are you today? Black History Month highlights of boxing history right now. We're talking about some of the greatest black fighters of all time, down to the Brown Bomber, Joe Louis. Okay? Joe Louis reigned as the world heavyweight champion from 1937 until his temporary retirement in 1949. Count it. That's 12 years. That's unheard of. That is insane. That's the longest single reign as world champion of any boxer in any weight class, on any planet, in any universe in history. During that 12-year stretch, the Brown Bomber was the winner in 25 consecutive title defenses. 25, a record for all boxing weight classes. And of those 25, 23 got knocked out. Only 2 went the distance. 15 in the first 5 rounds. 6 in the first round. That's when you're talking about Joe Louis in that 12-year reign. You got to look at what he did while he was doing within that 12-year reign and fighting 5, 6, 7 times a year. Okay? Incredible. That's why I call Joe Louis the greatest. That's greatest type stuff there. But just as important as his victories in the ring were the victories he allowed Black people to experience vicariously through his wins. During the crazy levels of racial terror and mistreatment, Black people found strength and inspiration around the fists of the Brown Bomber, who took on all comers. Sadly, though, The United States used him as a national symbol, standing in opposition to the rise of the Nazis in Germany. In his final years, the United States forgot about Joe Louis and treated him as a sideshow. Ironically, it was German boxer Max Schmeling who Louis fought twice. And Schmeling befriended Louis later in life, helped him out financially. They became best of friends, and Schmeling was a pallbearer at Louis's funeral. Okay, couple more. Iron Mike Tyson. Iron Mike Tyson. Don't even have to say too much about the baddest man on the planet, you know. Cus D'Amato had lived, he probably would have went through his career undefeated, okay? Cus passed away and Don King took over. You know, that was the beginning of the end. Then he got mixed up in that rape stuff. But he did come back and win a title after all that, you know. And Mike admittedly said after that loss to 42-1 underdog Buster Douglas, he was never the same. You know, 42-1 underdog came in there and beat him. And he said mentally he was never the same after that. But Iron Mike Tyson makes the cut. And finally, the greatest. Talking about the greatest black boxers. The greatest, Muhammad Ali. Now, I know I just said Joe Louis was the greatest, but they call Muhammad Ali the greatest, okay? What can we say about Ali? Already been enough said about it. This brother's nickname is the greatest. And for all that he did in the ring, including winning the heavyweight title 3 times, Ali's impact was even greater outside the ring, where he became a global legend for his stances for the oppressed and against the oppressors. Rumble, young man, rumble. Never gave up his principles, okay? Gave up the prime of his career for what he believed in. Muhammad Ali. That's why they call him the greatest, okay? More for what he did outside the ring. Now, he was great in the ring too, but you know, he could have knuckled under and went into the circus. He wasn't going to fight in the war. He was just going to do exhibition stuff for a year. So then he was going to let him go. But they just wanted to take him down because he was Muslim and they didn't want a Muslim heavyweight champion. And they did that. So but Ali stood on principle. Stood tall, man. Yes, he did. Muhammad Ali, the greatest. Now, let's get ready. The evolution of boxing. Okay, but first, let's talk about this meet and greet. Salute the legacy man. How are you today? The legacy man in the building. Monday through Friday, 2 p.m. CADES Sports The Box Story, bringing you all that boxing history. Salute legacy man. Appreciate you stopping by today. We're going to talk about the evolution of boxing. Hope you enjoy it. Stick around and enjoy it. But right now, let's talk about this.
Again, another meet and greet, this time in Brooklyn, New York, during the Tank Davis versus Lamont Roach Fight Week, Friday, February 28th from 8 p.m. until midnight. If you're planning on being in town for the fight, pull up on us at the meet and greet. Tickets can be purchased via Cash App at JBT Network 1. That's JBT Network 1. There is an early bird special for $20 from now until February the 1st. Then it's $30. That covers entry and food. There will also be a cash bar, so make sure you get your tickets early. Only a limited number of tickets will be sold, so make sure that you are in that number. Several door prizes will be given away. For more information, call 410-322-4365. That's 410-322-4365. And have a great JBT day. Brought to you by the JBT, Curtis Sewell, Treasurer.
Okay, sorry. All right, now let's continue with the show. Yeah, the meet and greet is February 28th. The $20 portion of buying the tickets is over there now, $30, but still worth it. You still get a chance to go to that fight, win a ticket to that fight, okay? Javante Davis and Lamont Roach on the day after the meet and greet. But it's going to be a great time. Meet all the content creators, the big wigs like Jay Hardcore and Senior and Squeeze from the Rides podcast, Just Do Boxing, D1. Meet our spokesperson, Big Dre. Meet them all. Meet some of the small potatoes of the JBT like CADES Sports too. They letting me come. Ain't that something? Okay. Oh man. Lost my place. Oh, I don't need this. Today is the evolution of boxing. I got a lot of notes. Let's start on page 1, not page 27. Yeah, I got like 30 something. But I promise I ain't gonna bore y'all. It's gonna be interesting. Okay. All right. So we're gonna just do some things Black history concerning boxing throughout Black History Month on the Highlights of Boxing History segment. We're gonna throw in to finish up the Ring Magazine fights of the decade in between every few days, and then we're gonna throw in some Black history events during the month. Mike Rim in the building. What's up, Mike? Just Do Boxing. What's up, Just Do? That's one of the famous content creators you get to meet at the meet and greet. Just Do Boxing. February 28th. Get your ticket for $30. Or you can get in running to win a ticket to the fight. $10 for one chance. $25 gets you 3 chances. And the $30 for the event automatically puts you in the drawing for the ticket. The drawing is going to be a week before the event, so you had time to get everything together and get on up there to the fight. And if you can't make it, just mail me the ticket. I drop you my address and stuff, and I'll go. So the ticket won't go to waste. Okay? You can't make it, just mail it to CADES Sports. I'm gonna be at the meet and greet anyway. Right? Okay. All right. The evolution of boxing. The new school lions versus the old school legends. Okay. Told you the music comes up by itself. Turn it down, but it always makes its way back up. How's that? I guess that's good. Here we go. Okay. The evolution of boxing. New school lions versus old school legends. We gotta keep up. Go chat too. I ain't trying to get far. Miss Cass is strict. Now, for the purpose of this discussion, we will define the old school as the periods between the 1940s up to 1980. And the new school will be from the 1980s up to the present day. Okay, now let's talk about the new school lions first. Now, advancements in science. Now, it is clear that today's fighters reap many benefits from the advancements in both nutritional as well as exercise science. Today's fighters are not only accompanied by their head trainer, cut man, and second corner man, they are also joined by a nutritionist who oversees the fighter's diet with customized diets as well as a strict eating schedule. Okay? Didn't have all that back in the old days, you know. Some of the old school boxers don't even know what a nutritionist is. Now, fighters today also bring in a strength and conditioning coach to ensure the fighter is recovering from their workouts so they can be in optimal fighting shape, when the time of the fight rolls around. Now, the training methods employed by these coaches include plyometrics, which aid in explosiveness, as well as the use of cryogenic pods for better recovery. I know some of those school fighters don't know what that is, cryogenic pods. Yeah, but these new school fighters use all of those type of things. Now, there are some fighters who go as far as employing the use of a sports psychologist to help aid them with the mental stress that boxing can induce. Sports psychologists. Indeed, today's fighter is a beneficiary of many luxuries not known to yesteryear's pugilists. Many different types of luxuries. Okay? Now, let's talk some advantage. I'm covering the advantages of today's fighters. Now, size. Okay? The most glaring change, and some would say greatest advantage that today's fighters have, is the immense size advantage. In today's heavyweight landscape, the average heavyweight stands approximately 6'6" in height, with an average weight of 245 pounds. That is a huge leap from the days of the 1940s, 50s, 60s, and 70s. Back then, the average heavyweight was 6'2", 215 pounds. With guys like Floyd Patterson, Rocky Marciano, Joe Frazier, and Mike Tyson being even shorter and lighter than that, right? And consider this. David Haye is 6'3", 224 pounds. He would be considered big in the old days, okay? And Haye competed in the new school era, and he was below average in size. In fact, one of the smaller heavyweights of this era of giants in the division. And he would be huge back in the old days, David Haye. Considered small nowadays. Hardcore boxing news in the building. What's up, Jay Hardcore? How are you today? Warlock Boxing. Salute. Warlock Boxing. Glad to have you aboard. We are talking about the evolution of boxing today. The new school lions versus the old school legends. Talking about some advantages for the new school lions right now. But salute. Hardcore Boxing News is the founder of this JBT. Okay, that's JH Hardcore. H stands for hangout. Salute, Jay. Okay, let's continue. All right, now where was I? Yeah, talking about size, right? Yeah, David Haye at 6'3", about 220 would be huge in the old days. And he's one of the smaller heavyweights of this era when he was out there. But the size advantage isn't exclusive to heavyweights. Today, the fighters of the lower weight classes have made it almost standard practice to fight in weight classes where they have a natural size advantage, right? Welterweights today would be middleweights in the 60s. Lightweights of the modern era would be 147 pounders in the 50s. And today, the dangerous practice of weight cutting for the weigh-in the day before the fight has made it so that many fighters are fighting in weight classes that they clearly don't belong in. This gives modern fighters a big advantage over their old school counterparts when it comes to size. Okay, now, fighters nowadays definitely have a lighter schedule. Now, Archie Moore had 219 total fights in his career from the old days. Sugar Ray Robinson had over 200. Willie Pep had 241, right? The point is, old school fighters fought a lot, okay? The wear and tear on their bodies and minds must have been excruciating. Now, in the modern age of boxing, fighters are not subject to the demanding fight frequency the older guys had to endure. Now, there are many reasons for this, such as fighters being more conscious of their health, being more business-oriented, as well as the aforementioned advancements in science, allowing fighters different means to stay sharp, right? Stay sharp. In the old days, you had to fight. But nowadays, you got all these strength coaches, nutritionists, and all that kind of stuff. You don't have to get in the ring to stay sharp. There's just other ways to do it nowadays. And there's also the matter of promoting fights. Fighters today are tasked with obligations such as fight tours, interview upon interview, and participating in events, all in the name of promoting their upcoming fights. Now, the modern boxer usually fights about 2, maybe 3 times a year, although 3 times is not that common of a practice, right? That's stretching it, Anyway, contrast that with the old days, where it was not uncommon for fighters to fight 3 times in 1 month, okay? Not a year, 3 times in 1 month. Jake LaMotta and Sugar Ray Robinson fought twice in 3 weeks, okay? The second fight of their series was February 5th. The third fight was February 24th, the same month. And then Jake LaMotta fought somebody else 2 weeks later, okay? But yes, the fighters back in those days sometimes fought 3 times a month. So you can see just how much things have changed, okay? Changed dramatically as far as the frequency of how these fighters compete now. They're actually fighting in the ring, okay? Dramatic change. Ray Patterson, straight out of New Jersey. What's up, RP? How you doing today? The evolution of boxing. Talking about some of these modern guys now. The new school. Like I said, for the purpose of this discussion, new school, old school is like 40s to like 80s. New school is like 80s to the present. Now, this lighter schedule allows the modern fighter the ability to preserve their bodies, as well as extend their careers. Okay, now we're talking about differences in eras. We have to talk about this. Performance-enhancing drugs, okay? Performance-enhancing drugs. Got to mention that. Now, performance-enhancing drugs. Now, anything said in this discussion is not mentioned as an accusation towards any fighter. It's just a conversation on a very well-known and polarizing subject in the sport of boxing. Okay, that's all. But let's not kid ourselves. PEDs are prevalent in all sports, and boxing is no exception. Now, for decades, PEDs have been hovering over boxing like an ominous cloud. Now, some of boxing's most famous fighters have either been accused or outright caught taking PEDs. And one look through the modern day boxing landscape, and you'll see acronyms such as USADA, WADA, VADA, all over the place. That's how prevalent drug use is today. Okay? That's just how prevalent it is. Now, why do fighters use PEDs? Okay. Why do fighters use PEDs? Good question. Glad you asked. You know why they use them? Because they work. Okay? Because they work. And you do get an advantage from them. Now, performance-enhancing drugs give fighters a huge edge over their competition. It allows fighters to recover faster, which allows them to train harder and more frequently, right? Fighters who cut massive amounts of weight have also employed the use of PEDs in the form of diuretics in order to help them dry out for the weigh-in. However, this has proven to be a double-edged sword because fighters are using PEDs to cut weight. The trauma of the weight cut combined with the use of the diuretics has produced an age of fighters who are yo-yoing up and down in weight, which has led to health complications, okay? And has also produced an era of undisciplined fighters who gain so much weight in between fights that they spend their training camps losing weight instead of sharpening their skills. Let me say that again. PEDs has also produced an era of undisciplined fighters who gain so much weight in between fights that they spend their training camps losing weight instead of sharpening their skills. Now, regardless of this, it is clear that performance-enhancing drugs give fighters an edge over their opposition. That is very clear. That is indisputable. Okay? Like I said, that's why they take them, because that's the main reason they take them, because they work. As difficult as it is to accept, the reality of the situation is this. Performance-enhancing drugs give today's fighters an advantage that the old school legends simply did not have. Okay, just did not have. Jarrell Hattie in the building. And Kensaw Love One, the family thing. What's up, Kensaw Love One? And Jarrell Hattie in the building. We're talking about the evolution of boxing today. New school lines versus the old school legends. Let's talk about the old school legends for a bit now, okay? Let's talk about the old school legends. But first, before we do that, let's talk about this.
Again, another meet and greet, this time in Brooklyn, New York, during the Tank Davis versus Lamont Roach fight week, Friday, February 28th from 8 p.m. until midnight. If you're planning on being in town for the fight, pull up on us at the meet and greet. Tickets can be purchased via Cash App at JBT Network 1. That's JBT Network 1. There is an early bird special for $20 from now until February the 1st. Then it's $30. That covers entry and food. There will also be a cash bar, so make sure you get your tickets early. Only a limited number of tickets will be sold, so make sure that you are in that number. Several door prizes will be given away. For more information, call 410-322-4365. That's 410-322-4365. And have a great JBT day. Brought to you by the JBT, Curtis Sewell, Treasurer.
That's me. Yeah, pull up, man. I told y'all you're going to meet some of the big wigs of the JBT, like Jay Hardcore, Just Do Boxing, Senior and Squeeze from the Rides podcast, Let's Talk Fashion, D1, Aunt McQueen, some of the big wigs. And like I told you, they letting small potatoes like Cash Sports come too. So hey, it's going to be a big time. That's what my grandfather used to say. We're going to have a big time. February 28th. Pull up. And yeah, $30 now to get in, but that puts you in the drawing for a ticket to the fight. And $10 will also get you one chance for a ticket. And $25 will get you 3 chances, okay? We done gave away some amazing prizes already over the past year, so somebody gonna win a ticket, okay? And like I said, it's the drawing for the ticket is a week before the fight, so you can make arrangements to make it to the fight. But if you still can't make it, just mail me the ticket. I'll make it. I'm gonna be up there anyway, right? So I will go in your place, okay? Kensaw Love One with another super chat. Appreciate you, Kensaw Love One, with the super chat. Okay, let's get back to it now. If I can, don't take me till the rest of the show to find out where I was at. Damn. Oh, man. Anybody know? No, I know. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, we get ready to talk about the old school legends. That's right. I don't know if yeah. Did I change the picture? I don't know. Old school legends. Let's talk about them now. Okay, appreciate everybody for stopping by, and the likes are looking great. Man. We get to 30. When Jay come back on, somebody will hit the bag a few times. If we get 30 likes, okay? I'm too old to hit it, but we'll find somebody. Okay, now, old school legends. Now, remember that grueling schedule that the old timers had to endure, right? Now, while it certainly caused a lot of wear and tear, it also did something else. It made the old timers incredibly skillful. Now, the law of repetition states that the more times you spend practicing a given task, the better you will be at it. So let's ask a question. Who is better at their craft? The fighter who fights 8 to 10 times a year, or the fighter who fights once or twice a year? No brainer, right? And to watch old school fighters is to see a masterclass in skill, okay? Watch these old school guys is to see a masterclass in skill. This was made possible by the frequency of their fight schedule. It was not uncommon for fighters to fight exhibition fights in between their actual fights, okay? These guys already fighting 8, 10 times a year. Then they might have 2 or 3 exhibitions during the year, okay? In between their actual fights. The old legends use tactics that are all but gone now, with the exception of a few fighters nowadays. The old school guys were masters at fighting from all distances, especially the lost art of infighting, right? Some fighters bringing it back and still use it, but yeah, not like the old school guys did it. Now, this is a crucial advantage because this factor is what helps close the size gap the modern fighters have over the old timers. It was skill that allowed Max Baer at 6'1", 200 pounds to beat 6'6", 275 pound Primo Carnera. It was skill that enabled 6'3" Muhammad Ali to beat 6'6" Duke Sabadon. Clearly, skills pays our bills. Clearly, okay? Now, teachers. Talking about the old school guys now. Teachers. Gonna talk about some of them legendary old trainers. Don't miss this, the teachers. Now, the old school fighters fought often, and that allowed them to stay skillful, fit, and sharp. But someone had to teach them the craft. Someone had to mold, guide, and help them hone their craft. That someone was the teacher, okay? That someone was the teacher. Now, because of boxing's immense popularity in the old days, along with the grueling fight schedule, the demand for real trainers was such that many of the trainers became as famous as their fighters. And not because they sought the limelight, but because of the results they produced, right? Now, browse through boxing's rich history, and you'll read stories of legendary trainers like Charlie Goldman, helping Rocky Marciano with his footwork, Jack Blackburn, imparting his vast boxing knowledge to Joe Louis, George Janford, training the great Sugar Ray Robinson, the legendary Ray Arcel, training the 2 greatest 135 pounders of all time, Benny Leonard and Roberto Duran, over 50 years apart from one another. And Ray Arcel is legendary, man, because check this out. Ray Arcel had at least one world champion in every decade from 1920 to 1980, 60 years. In some decades, he had several of them. But from 1920 to 1980, this man trained at least one world champion. Incredible. And freaking incredible, man. Now, another crucial reason these legendary trainers were a huge advantage for the old legend era was that these men didn't just train fighters. They built them from the ground up, okay? Built them from the ground up. Cus D'Amato would take a scared young kid from the streets of Brooklyn named Floyd Patterson and turned him into the first two-time heavyweight world champion, okay? Floyd Patterson. Now, all of these old school trainers had the ability to develop the ever important trait called character in their fighters. Okay, character, that's big. Character. Now, the old legends didn't have trainers. They had teachers. Teachers who imparted such vast knowledge that it bordered on religious, right? These teachers forged relationships with their fighters. They built skills that were valuable in and out of the ring. Now let's talk about this. This might be a little bit, make you shake your head a little bit, but testosterone. Talking about the old school fighters, testosterone. Now this probably made you shake your head and say, huh? But bear with me, because this is very interesting. This is very interesting. Testosterone. Now in October of 2006, Reuters Health magazine published an article about a study conducted by Dr. Thomas Travison and his colleagues at the New England Research Institute in Watertown, Massachusetts. Okay? They conducted a study. Now, the study found that there has been an alarming drop in the male hormone testosterone since the 1980s. Now, what that means is that a 65-year-old man in the 2000s has testosterone levels that are 15% lower than a 65-year-old man in 1987. Now, and there have been many other studies supporting this claim, okay? Many other studies supporting this claim. So what does this have to do with boxing? I know you're like, what the hell they got to do with boxing? I'm going to tell you. What does this have to do with boxing? Now, we've already talked about the grueling schedule that the old timers had to endure. And we ask ourselves, how they endured it, right? Well, this may be a big reason why. Testosterone. Now, though it's been vilified in the media, testosterone is a very important hormone. It aids in, and listen, testosterone aids in cognitive ability, healing from trauma, and recovering from high-level stress situations, among many other benefits. And what do those three things sound like? Cognitive ability, healing from trauma, and recovering from high-level stress situations. Now take a look at the resumes of the old school legends, and you will see that cognitive ability, recovery from stress and trauma situations were all definitely a big part of the sport of boxing in their era, okay? And let's not forget all the stories about the insane toughness of the old legends of boxing, okay? Let's not forget, like Willie Pep was in a plane crash and the doctor told him he would never fight again. Willie not only fought again, he fought 10 more times the year of the plane crash, okay? 10 more times that year. Willie told the doctor, no, I'm going to fight again. He said, what I'm not going to do again is fly at night, okay? He not only fought again, he fought 10 more times that year. That's tough. Now that we know they had higher natural levels of testosterone, we may have a big reason why they were able to endure such a demanding fight schedule. We also have to ask this question. Is it possible that this decline in testosterone, now listen to this, listen, I took this very interesting, listen to this. We have to ask this question, okay? Have to ask this question. Is it possible that this decline in testosterone has driven up the use of performance-enhancing drugs in the modern era? Is that possible? We've already talked about the widespread use of PEDs in sports today. So it is a question worth asking. And another huge advantage that the boxers in the old days had, character. Bruce Gas, Boxing, Jazz, and more in the building. What's up, Bruce Gas? You said mine are 900 million. What's up, Bruce? Good to see you. We're talking about the evolution of boxing, comparing some of the advantages of the modern era and some of the advantages of the old school guys. Now, this is a big one here that the old school guys had, old school legends had, character. I'm not saying, these guys nowadays don't have character, but the old schools had it in spades. But salute Bruce Gas, Boxing, Jazz, and more. Character. Let's talk about character in relation to these old school legends, these old school fighters. Character. Now let's make one thing clear. Make one thing clear first. Anyone who has the courage to lace on those gloves, go up those steps, and enter that boxing ring has character. Okay? Has character. Some more than others, but anybody who does that has character. Now, today there are many fighters who exhibit this amazing quality, but the old school fighters seem to possess an endless reservoir of it. Okay? Endless. The old school guys. Okay, let's talk some more about character. Yeah, this is a big one here. Character. Now, the old legends lived through times and situations that would make a warrior out of the softest of men, okay, what they dealt with when they were fighting. The old school boxers had to endure wars, mafia intimidation, racism, and boxing politics of the type that make today's boxing politics look like child's play, okay? Now, how do we know these old school legends had this kind of character? Glad you asked. Listen to some of the things they did, okay? Bojack defended his lightweight title with a broken leg. All right, with a broken leg. This man defended his title with a broken leg. Sugar Ray Robinson, when pressured by the mafia to take a dive, told them no. Willie Pep, despite knowing Sandy Sadler was younger, bigger, stronger, and about 10 times more powerful than he was, decided to fight him anyway, when he very easily could have avoided him, okay? Jake LaMotta refused to go down when Sugar Ray Robinson brutally pounded him in the St. Valentine's Day Massacre, okay? Muhammad Ali gave up the prime of his career for his belief, standing firm on morals and principles. It's these types of displays of character which give the old school legends the advantage over the majority of the modern fighters. So who wins, the old school legends or the new school lions? Now, has boxing really evolved? Has boxing really evolved? Or did we simply trade in one thing for something else? Now remember, boxing can be both objective and subjective. So consider and analyze the factors we've discussed so far and come to the conclusion of which of these eras you consider better, because we're going to talk more about that later. But right now, let's talk about this. Will there ever be another true golden era of boxing? Will we ever have another true golden era of boxing? That's a good question. Let's talk about it. Again, glad you asked. Let's talk about it. Would there ever be another true golden era of boxing? Now, boxing died on June 11th, 2005, the night Mike Tyson retired from the sport. Now, the golden era of electrifying talent and entertainment in the sport, which spanned several decades, was over. Okay? After Tyson retired, it was the era of Lennox Lewis and the Klitschko brothers. Okay? Lennox Lewis and the Klitschko brothers era, which lacked excitement, which fights became chess games in which both boxers hugged multiple times with sporadic flurries of punches, right? In the current era we're in right now, boxers are more media influencers. Are more social media. Let me start that over. The current era that we're in right now, the boxers are more social media influencers than boxers. Okay? Now let's talk about we're going to get back to this current era, but let's talk about the peak of boxing excellence. The peak of boxing excellence, okay? It can't be 318, man. No. I think that's really 218, right? It's only been on here about 20 minutes. Wow. The peak of boxing excellence. Now, boxing has gone through several golden eras to this point. The early 20th century saw the dominance of fighters such as Jack Dempsey and Joe Louis, who were both very significant figures in the sport during that time. In the 1950s, fighters like Rocky Marciano, Joe Louis, and Ezra Charles became household names and cultural icons. Then came the 1960s, featuring the talented young Olympic champion who beat up his opponents first with words before getting in the ring with them. That was the legendary Muhammad Ali. And Ali's era was the zenith of boxing excellence. Okay, the zenith of boxing excellence, Ali's era. Because of several factors. That era featured some of the most iconic and consistent high-profile matchups in boxing history, including the 1971 Fight of the Century and the 1975 Thriller in Manila, both between Ali and Frazier. The latter, which is often considered one of the greatest boxing matches in boxing history. Okay? Now, the shenanigans in Ali's mouth also contributed to the legend of the era. Ali's mouth and the shenanigans he did. His constant yapping even triggered Sonny Liston into firing a pop gun at Ali's head during a face-off. Now, in the 1980s, the epic battle between Sugar Ray Leonard and Tommy Hearns came to an end in the 14th round when Leonard landed ferocious punches that forced the referee to step in and stop the fight, awarding Leonard a dramatic TKO. On February 11th, 1990, Mike Tyson lost to Buster Douglas by a 10th round TKO, ending Tyson's 37-fight winning streak. He had 37 in a row. Tyson's 37-fight winning streak. Yep. Now, during this current era, during that era, the Ali 70s, Ali Four Kings, Tyson's era, the fans never had to wait long for an iconic fight to happen, okay? The 70s and 80s was loaded with iconic fights. Even the press conferences were massive events. Further, although there were plenty of power punches, the golden era represented a pure reform of boxing, with a greater emphasis on the art and craft of the sport, from the stance to the footwork to the body positioning, down to the different entertaining boxing styles. And the sport was less commercialized back then, okay, allowing for a more authentic and untainted expression of boxing. Now, the shady promoters are the only persistent pests and constant in the sport, okay? Now, the era of rich ballers. Now, what am I talking about? The era of rich ballers. Now, some boxers in this modern era have been outstanding across different weight divisions and have done so well, they kept the flag of the sport flying, okay? Now, the term baller is usually used to refer to a person who spends lots of money and lives the good lifestyle. Now, in that sense, the current era, of boxing is a league of rich ballers. In recent years, some boxers have garnered attention for their focus on exotic lifestyles outside of the ring. With the rise of social media and increased visibility, many fighters prioritize showcasing their wealth and luxury possessions. Okay? Now, while this lifestyle can enhance the personal brand and attract sponsorships, emphasis on extravagant may overshadow the dedication and commitment to the craft, right? Which is two of the qualities that characterize boxers in previous eras. Too much focus on wealth and luxury can also potentially impact these current era fighters' performance and long-term legacy in the sport, okay? And when they are more worried about securing their income source and other material gains, guess what? When they are more worried about securing their income source and other material gains, boxers only take carefully selected fights, okay? Sound familiar? Boxers only take carefully selected fights. Which era of boxing was better? Now, choosing between the two eras is very tough. There is the perception that boxing in the current era is not as entertaining as the golden era. Now, this can be attributed to several factors. One significant issue with modern boxers is the sanctioning bodies, an insane amount of championship belts, leading to confusion among the fans, right? And weakening the title landscape, all these belts. With multiple champions in each weight class, it can be challenging to determine the true undisputed champion, which diminishes the significance of individual titles, okay, and fights. And it undermines the overall entertainment value of the sport, okay? Now, another factor is the lack of consistent mega fights. Now, while there have been some notable matchups in recent years, the current era of boxing has not consistently produced the same level of mega fights and rivalries the golden era had. Fighters like Mike Tyson fought several fights in a year, many more times than the number of fights these heavyweights fight nowadays. Mike Tyson fought more times in a year than you can take three heavyweights in this era combined, right? And many heavyweights from the current era go an entire year with just one fight. And the current era of boxing has arguably seen a decline in technical skill and artistry compared to the golden era. With the rise of MMA and other combat sports, there may be a shift towards a more complete style of fighting, which can lead to less strategic and nuanced performances in the ring. Overall, while there are still many talented boxers and exciting matchups in the current era of boxing, these factors contribute to the perception that this era may not be as consistently entertaining as the golden era. Now, again, opinions on the entertainment value of boxing are both objective and subjective, and they vary depending on individual preference and perspective. But will there ever be another golden era of boxing? It's likely because history has a way of repeating itself. But right now, we can only hope. Okay? Right now, we can only hope. Now let's do this again. Let's look at some of the most dominant boxers from each decade. BN Boxing News. What's up, BN Boxing News? How are you today? Let's look at some of the most dominant boxers from every decade. I know we've done this before, but let's look at it. I cannot believe it's 3:30. But yeah, we got this meet and greet coming up, man, and it's only like 3 weeks away. It's February 28th. Today is February the 3rd, right? So yeah, get your tickets.
It again, another meet and greet, this time in Brooklyn, New York, during the Tank Davis versus Lamont Roach fight week, Friday, February 28th from 8 p.m. until midnight. If you're planning on being in town for the fight, pull up on us at the meet and greet. Tickets can be purchased via Cash App at JBT Network 1. That's JBT Network 1. There is an early bird special for $20 from now until February the 1st. Then it's $30. That covers entry and food. There will also be a cash bar, so make sure you get your tickets early. Only a limited number of tickets will be sold, so make sure that you are in that number. Several door prizes will be given away. For more information, call 410-322-4365. That's 410-322-4365. And have a great JBT day. Brought to you by the JBT, Curtis Sewell, Treasurer.
Thank you, Big Dre. Yeah, pull up to the meet and greet February 28th. $30 for ticket now. And that ticket automatically puts you into the drawing to win a ticket to the fight the next day. Gervonta Tank Davis versus Lamont Roach. That drawing will be on February 21st, a week before the meet and greet. Door prizes will be at the meet and greet. You can win door prizes. Going to be a lot of fun. Good food. Just ask Senior. Senior's still talking about the food from the last meet and greet way back in July. So yeah, gonna get some good food up there, okay? Let's talk about some of the most dominant boxers from every decade. Now, there are many criteria that can be considered when compiling lists of greatest fighters. And all of them have wonderful potential for provoking argument and debate. Now, ranking pound for pound boxers from different eras against one another is always problematic, considering the vastly different conditions under which fighters in different eras campaign. But ranking fighters against each other from within the same decades is a slightly clearer exercise and creates a slightly clearer picture. Okay, the 1920s, most dominant, from 1900 to 1909, the most dominant boxer was Joe Gans, the old master, Joe Gans. Now, Gans was the first African-American to win a world title in boxing. From 1902 to 1908, he reigned as the lightweight champion of the world. But throughout the decade, he routinely fought and beat much larger men. Now, Gans' professional record is listed on BoxRec as 145 wins, 10 losses, and 16 draws. But that is incomplete. And that's an incomplete accounting of his professional accomplishments. Records for the early 20th century are simply impossible to document with precision. Now, fighters like Gans often fought several times a week, right? And even multiple times in the same day, right? Same day. Now, due to the tenuous legal status of boxing in this era, fights were usually presented as exhibitions, because a lot of times, a lot of places, boxing was banned, okay, back around that time. So, a lot of places, they called them exhibitions. They could get away with it. Now, when you had the exhibitions, you had what you call newspaper decisions, where some newspaper guys at ringside would print the winner in the paper the next day. And the situation was further clouded due to unscrupulous sports editors, sometimes publishing inaccurate results at the behest of shady promoters. Like I said earlier, shady promoters is the one constant we've had throughout boxing, okay? Shady promoters. But newspaper records of the era also make clear how dominant that Joe Gans truly was, right? Known as the Old Master. He was routinely described as the elite fighter of the time. And although Gans fought in the early 1900s, his style was thoroughly like a modern fighter. Yep. He was like 100 years before his time. The most dominant fighter from 1910 to 1919 was Jimmy Wald. Now, over 100 years after he retired from the sport, Jimmy Wald is still regarded by many boxing historians as the greatest flyweight of all time. He was 5'2", 108 pounds. He was a Welshman, known as the Mighty Atom. He also ranks among the sport's top pound-for-pound punchers. In 2003, the Ring magazine ranked Wald the third greatest puncher of all time, pound for pound. And from the time of his professional debut in 1911 until the end of 1919, he compiled an official record of 124 wins, 2 losses, 1 draw, with 94 knockouts. For his career, his official record was 134 wins, 4 losses, 1 draw, with 99 knockouts. But considering the era he fought in, it's a certainty that he fought many more times that went unrecorded. Like all the greats of his era, he fought and knocked out much larger men on a regular basis. Now, the most dominant boxer of the 1920s was Harry Greb. Harry Greb established himself as perhaps the greatest middleweight in history during the 1920s. The only fellow middleweight he lost to during the decade was Tiger Flowers. And that fight came after Greb had fought nearly 300 professional fights and suffered serious retinal damage. Now, aside from Flowers, the only fighters Greb lost to during the decade were light heavyweights and heavyweights. He fought bigger men on a regular basis and nearly always beat them. He's the only man to ever beat the great Gene Tunney. Greb's record during the decade of the 20s nearly defies comprehension. In 1925, he fought 25 times and lost only once to Tunney. Known as the Pittsburgh Windmill, he was an explosive ball of energy. Considering the ring, he was an explosive ball of energy inside the ring, right? And he was just a legendary partier outside the ring. Greb's near mythical status is enhanced by the fact that almost no known footage exists of him in the ring. Isn't that something? Almost no known footage exists of this man fighting. The great Harry Greb. Went 45-0 in 1919, by the way. 45 fights in 1 year, won all of them. Most dominant boxer of the 1930s, Henry Armstrong. William Old School Rant in the building. What's up, Old School? What's happening? Good to see you. One half of the Angry White Men podcast. Doing big things in the JBT. Salute, Old School. We talking about some of the most boxers of every decade now. We did the evolution of boxing today. And we're closing down with the most dominant boxers of every decade since we went through some different eras. Most dominant boxer of the 1930s was Henry Armstrong, Homicide Hank. Now, according to BoxRec, Henry Armstrong lost his first professional fight to Al Lavino in July 1931. Then he proceeded to lose 2 of his next 3 fights. From his inauspicious start, he proceeded to have perhaps the greatest decade in the history of the sport. For the entire decade of the 1930s, he averaged over a fight per month. Not a fight per month a year, a fight per month for the entire decade. And compiled a professional record of 103 wins, 12 losses, 7 draws for the decade. Homicide Hank started at the very bottom and took the hard road up the ranks. In the second half of the 30s, he achieved an unprecedented level of dominance. In October 1937, he knocked out Petey Saran to capture the world featherweight title. In May 1938, he roughed up fellow legend Barney Ross to capture the welterweight title by unanimous decision. Later that year in August, he beat Lou Ambers to add the lightweight title to his trophy case. At that time in boxing, there were only 8 weight classes and only one world champion in each of them. Armstrong was the top dog for 126 to 147. In today's boxing world, as many as 60 or more fighters at any given time holds a claim to a world title within that same 21-pound span. You might have 20 in one weight class, okay? Most dominant fighter in the 1940s, the Brown Bomber, Joe Louis, okay? The Brown Bomber. From 1937 to 1949, Joe Louis reigned as the heavyweight champion for an unprecedented 12 years. He was perhaps even more dominant in the 1930s than he was in the 1940s. During the 30s, he knocked out all 5 men who preceded him as world champion: Jack Sharkey, Primo Carnera, Max Baer, James Braddock, and the German Max Schmeling. And you could also make a good argument for Sugar Ray Robinson as the dominant fighter of the 1940s. But we'll get to Sugar Ray Robinson when we get to the 50s. But Louis was the face of boxing during the decade and one of the biggest stars in all of professional sports. He was the first American hero of any kind whose popularity transcended race. Louis went 18-0 with 15 knockouts during the 1940s. His level of competition was frequently maligned at the time, but his dominance had a lot to do with how poorly every boxer looked against him, okay? Now, during the hard years of World War II and the early post-war boom, few things were constant in American society, but there was one thing you could count on: Joe Louis being the heavyweight champion of the world, okay? That's one thing you can count on during that period, for the decade of the 40s. The most dominant fighter of the 1950s was Sugar Ray Robinson. Okay, there he is on the right. Now, Sugar Ray Robinson began the 1950s as a reigning world welterweight champion. On February 14th, 1951, he captured the middleweight belt by round 13 TKO of Jake LaMotta in the iconic St. Valentine's Day Massacre fight. Now, Robinson was even more dominant in the 1940s when he lost just once in 10 years. But, you know, all Joe Louis was also in the 40s, so sorry, Sugar Ray. But he lost just once in the 40s. But he was still better than everybody else in the 50s, even with a 2.5-year retirement from June 1952 to January 1955, okay? Robinson went 41-5 for the decade. 4 of the 5 opponents who beat him were Hall of Famers, and 3 of them fell to Robinson in rematches. One of them, Joey Maxim, was the light heavyweight champion, and Sugar Ray was far ahead of him on the cards when he collapsed from heat exhaustion after round 13, right? Robinson entered the 1950s as the middleweight champion of the world. I wonder who the most dominant fighter for the 60s was. Anybody got a guess? Muhammad Ali, most dominant fighter of the 1960s. Now, the majority of Muhammad Ali's most iconic fights occurred during the 1970s. But by then, he had slowed down a step, and he was forced to alter his style and rely more on guts and guile to win wars of attrition in the 70s. But during the 1960s, Ali dominated the heavyweight division as thoroughly as anyone before or since. He combined legitimate heavyweight size with the quickness of a middleweight, and the combination made him nearly untouchable. He turned professional in 1960 after winning an Olympic gold medal. Between winning that gold medal and March 1967, he put together a perfect 29-0 record with 23 by way of knockout. In 1964, he captured the world heavyweight title from the menacing Sonny Liston when he made the Big Bear quit on the stool after 6 rounds. In 1967, Ali's situation with the Vietnam War occurred, and his ability to box was taken away from him. But that move made Ali into a cultural and political icon, in addition to a boxing superstar. And eventually, he was able to return to the sport. And by that time, it was a new decade, and a second chapter of Ali's remarkable career was about to begin. Muhammad Ali, the most dominant boxer of the 70s, the hands of stone, Roberto Duran. The hands of stone, Roberto Duran. Okay, Roberto, I'm sorry. I like doing that. Roberto Duran was involved in some of boxing's greatest moments during the 1980s, a decade in which he collected world titles at welterweight, junior middleweight, and middleweight. But he entered the 80s already established as an international superstar and one of the sport's top pound-for-pound fighters. Yeah, when he got to the 80s, he was already the hands of stone. Now, during the 1970s, Duran had a dominant run to rival any fighter in the sport's history. He entered the decade of the 70s as an undefeated teenage super featherweight. He was ferocious but unrefined. His manager, Carlos Aleta, procured the services of legendary trainers Ray Arcel. I told you about Ray Arcel and Freddie Brown. And under their tutelage, Duran developed into a slick defensive technician to augment his relentless offense. By the end of the 1970s, a significant percentage of boxing historians and Cash Sports the Box historian regarded the hands of stone. Oh, no. By the end of the 1970s, a significant percentage of boxing historians and Cash Sports the Box historians regarded the hands of stone as the greatest fighter in the history of the lightweight division. Duran compiled a record of 54 wins and 1 loss with 41 knockouts for the decade of the 1970s. His only loss came by decision to the super tough Esteban de Jesus. Duran won their 2 rematches by stoppage. Fighter of the decade for the 1970s, the hands of stone, Roberto Duran. Bad man. I ain't gonna say it no more. Okay, for the 1980s, Marvelous Marvin Hagler. Most dominant fighter for the 1980s, Marvelous Marvin Hagler. Right? Now, Marvelous Marvin Hagler's run at the top of the middleweight division in the 1980s is among the most dominating reigns of any champion at any weight in the sport's history. After spending much of the 1970s as the sport's most avoided fighter, Hagler finally captured the middleweight crown from Alan Minter in 1980, stopping the Brit in London's Wembley Arena in just 3 rounds, after which the angry UK fans threw objects into the ring, and Hagler and Minter both needed police escorts to get from the ring to their dressing rooms. It was truly a wild scene. But after that win, Over the next 6 years, Hagler would make 12 title defenses with only one fellow four king, the Hands of Stone, Roberto Duran, going the distance. Hagler during the 1980s seemed about as unbeatable as any fighter in boxing history. When Sugar Ray Leonard came out of retirement and defeated Hagler in 1987, it was a shocking event and hotly disputed. Hagler made some tactical mistakes he would not have made in a rematch. And the second fight, no doubt, would have likely gone different. Unfortunately, it never materialized. Never got the second fight. Hagler came out in the first round, and second round orthodox. He never did that. And Sugar Ray won both rounds. That was the difference right there, man. Yeah. Started the fight orthodox. Yeah, and it cost. But 1990s, fight of the decade for the 1990s is Roy Jones Jr. Yeah, Roy Jones Jr. Roy Jones Jr., okay. Now, in this century, 2000s, Roy Jones Jr. compiled a record of 26 wins, 9 losses. He was knocked out 5 times after the new millennium, including by secondary level fighters like Danny Green and Dennis Lebedev. Roy became average during the last 15 years of his 30-plus year career. During the last few years of Roy's career, it was almost difficult to remember how thoroughly dominant he had been during the 90s, right? When we're looking at that Roy at the end, now let's talk about why he was the most dominant fighter in the 90s, though. Now, Roy turned professional in 1988 after falling victim to the worst judging decision of any kind in the entire history of the Olympic Games, right? Yeah, that was terrible what they did to Roy. So in May 1993, he won the vacant IBF middleweight title by beating Bernard Hopkins. In November 1994, he moved up to super middleweight and beat James Lights Out Tony for the IBF title. Okay? Then he lost a single fight during the entire decade of the 90s, and that was by disqualification when he accidentally struck Montel Griffin after Griffin had taken a knee. You know, that was in March 1997. But Jones won the rematch 5 months later by first round knockout. That was the only fight he lost in the 90s, that disqualification, and he won the rematch by first round knockout. And for the decade of the 1990s, Roy Jones compiled a record of 36 wins, just 1 loss, that disqualification, with 29 knockouts. He ended the 90s as the undisputed light heavyweight champion of the world. And then 2000s to now, I didn't do anything for I did just 2000s to now, the most dominant fighter is Floyd Mayweather Jr. Floyd Mayweather Jr. Okay? Now, Floyd Mayweather Jr. Floyd gets the nod for the decades at the beginning of the 2000s, you know. Now, there's some room for his haters to criticize his record. Now, I'm not saying Floyd purposely ducked anyone, but his record would have been more impressive if he had opted to fight Paul Williams and Antonio Margarito in 2008 instead of retiring and going to professional wrestling. Yeah, that would have been a little bit more impressive for Floyd. If he would have, especially Paul Williams on there, especially Paul Williams. And the haters will always hold on to Floyd not facing Manny until 2015. Although, I think if he'd have fought in 2008, 2010, if he'd have fought Manny 2008, 2010, the version of Pretty Boy would have been even more dominant over Manny. Pretty Boy would have possibly stopped Manny. Okay, so either way, Floyd wins by domination, and Pretty Boy possibly stops Manny. If they fought 2008, 2010, yeah, that Floyd probably stops Manny. Okay, and the first 15 years of the decade of the 2000s, Floyd was more dominant than anybody else in the sport. In fact, I would say Jose Luis Castillo was really the only close fight Floyd was in, right? And he won that fight with an injured arm. Now, the Oscar fight wasn't really that close. A lot of people, including one of the judges, was fooled by all that missing Oscar was doing when Floyd was against the ropes. Yeah, Oscar was just missing most of those punches, man. Fooled one of the judges because even one of the judges gave Oscar the fight. It was a split decision. Should have been unanimous. And Floyd dominated. Floyd dominated in his time in the 2000s through pure boxing acumen, and he was a defensive wizard with a ring IQ off the charts. Floyd's ring IQ rates among the best of all time in my book. Okay, there you have it. The most dominant boxers of every decade, and I forgot the title of the show. The Evolution of Boxing. That was it. The Evolution of Boxing. I forgot the title. I don't know. How did it get off the screen? Who took my title? Oh, I got it. Oh, I see what happened. I still got the commercial up there. There we go. The Evolution of Boxing. The old school legends versus the new school. The old school lions versus the new school legends.
Is doing it again. Another meet and greet, this time in Brooklyn, New York, during the Tank Davis versus Lamont Roach fight week. Friday, February 28th from 8 p.m. until midnight. If you're planning on being in town for the fight, pull up on us at the meet and greet. Tickets can be purchased via Cash App at JBT Network 1. That's JBT Network 1. There is an early bird special for $20 from now until February the 1st. Then it's $30. That covers entry and food. There will also be a cash bar, so make sure you get your tickets early. Only a limited number of tickets will be sold, so make sure that you are in that number. Several door prizes will be given away. For more information, call 410-322-4365. That's 410-322-4365. And have a great JBT day. Brought to you by the JBT, Curtis Sewell, Treasurer.
My bad. The early bird special is over. Okay. It's now back to $30. Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry about that. The early bird special is over. We got Just Do Boxing coming up in about 5 minutes. Appreciate everybody for rocking with me today. Hope you enjoyed the show. Let's preview the week real quick. Tomorrow is the day we're talking about the divisions. Remember, we came all the way from heavyweight. We're at 118 now, bantamweight. We're going to look at a little history of bantamweight tomorrow. We're going to look at some big fights. We had the division, some other significant events that happened at bantamweight over the years. Some of the former greats that performed there, and the top 10 fighting at bantamweight right now as we speak. Okay, Wednesday, brought to you by Thomas Hill. We're looking at some of the boxing styles. We've done the Cuban boxing style. We did the Mexican boxing style last week. Tomorrow, the Eastern European style, or the Soviet style, whatever you want to call it, but it's Eastern European because a lot of those countries that were part of the Soviet Union is no more. They're part of Eastern Europe now. So it's Eastern European boxing style, okay? Thursday, boxing in the States continues with Oklahoma. History of boxing in Oklahoma, briefly. Some other significant events that happened concerning the sport in Oklahoma. And, some boxers from Oklahoma. Don't miss Friday, the Profile Day Friday. The life and career of James Lights Out Tony. If you're listening, at James Lights Out Tony Friday. The life and career of James Lights Out Tony Friday. Okay, we're going to get ready to get out of here. Just Do Boxing up next. I appreciate everybody for rocking with me today. Part of that JBT network. Don't forget the meet and greet, February 28th. The drawing is February 21st. Appreciate Melanin Queen 1000% for her great work she does in moderating. But I appreciate everybody. Join me tomorrow because if it's Monday through Friday, 2 p.m., it's The Boxtorian bringing you all that boxing history. Just Do Boxing straight ahead. This is Cast Sports. Everybody have a great afternoon, and I will see y'all around those JBT streets.